Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Work Permits South Africa's podcast page, hosted by Xpatweb, your premium immigration service provider. I use some of the thousands of applicants out there who've recently received a rejection from the Department of Home Affairs, and are now left wondering what exactly happens, what's the next steps, how do you go about rectifying this process? You're not alone. We've seen that a lot of our clients, as well as within the market, that this is one of the key or hot topics at the moment because it seems to not be going away. It seems to be ever prevalent at the moment. So today we've decided here at Xpatweb to address the appeals process, to address the steps forward and exactly how you may go about in terms of rectifying the situation. I'm Adil Wadi, one of the senior immigration consultants here at Xpatweb, and I've asked my esteemed colleague Benjamin Franzel, an admitted attorney and an immigration consultant, to just try and give us a bit of guidance with regards to the way forward and how we go about fixing the scenario. So, Ben, we've seen a lot of rejections received, but more importantly, we've seen a lot of rejections received which were poorly adjudicated, not a good basis for the rejection whatsoever. Is there anything you can attribute that to? Is there a specific reason which you might put a finger on to say that this is why we've seen this change from the Department of Home Affairs?
Well, thank you, Otto. I think it can largely be attributed to the department's attempt in clearing the visa backlog. As we've seen, the Minister of Home Affairs indicated that the previous visa backlog would be cleared by December 2024, and we have to give credit to the Department of Home Affairs in actually achieving that particular goal. But obviously, in keeping with established timelines, that may largely have caused a drop in the effectiveness of decisions being made, and obviously gave rise to some erroneous decisions slipping through the cracks.
No, definitely. I mean, it's something that we're seeing almost every day. So, in terms of the process to be followed once you do receive a rejection, I know appeal is the first thing that comes to mind. Is there a certain type of appeal which needs to be submitted? What exactly does the Immigration Act make provisions for?
Although the Immigration Act makes provision for 2 internal appeal applications to be submitted to the Department of Home Affairs. So if an initial appeal has been lodged, the Immigration Act makes provision for a subsequent appeal to be lodged. Obviously, should you have received a second rejection on that initial application.
I mean, 2 doesn't seem like a lot because, I mean, you never know what might happen out there. So let's say, for example, we have an applicant out there who submitted a visa application or renewal application. It's got rejected. They've appealed. It's got rejected again. Now they've submitted the last appeal. If this gets rejected as well, does that mean it's the end of road for them? Does it mean they have to return home? Their stay in South Africa has come to an end? Or what exactly happens in that instance?
No, not at all, Otto. Look, the appeal options contained within the Immigration Act is mostly limited to internal appeal applications being submitted to the Department of Home Affairs directly. Should a subsequent rejection be received on the second appeal being lodged, it does not provide for an exhaustive list of remedies. The applicant always has the option of approaching the High Court to provide further relief in the circumstances by making an application to the court to have the decision reviewed and set aside, of course, should there be sufficient merit to do so.
I think that's a relief for anyone who may be watching this because just having 2 options available doesn't seem exactly the best scenario. But on that note, with regards to the process itself, can you just run us just through a little bit of what the process entails? How do you go about from the day you receive the rejection to being able to submit that appeal?
Well, Otto, I think the initial and most important consideration in the circumstances is that an applicant must be aware that an appeal application must be submitted within 10 business days of receipt of the rejection notice. The appeal application process itself is quite straightforward. I think the most complex issue when it comes to appeal applications specifically is addressing the rejection notice specifically. So how we normally go about it is by inclusion within the appeal application an appeal motivational letter which directly addresses the reasons provided by the department for the rejection and setting out specific grounds for reconsideration of the application as well.
Okay, so seems quite simple in the number of documents, but also seems quite complex in the type of documents being submitted.
Definitely.
So let's say I get all my ducks in a row. I now managed to submit my appeal application. It's accepted. I think the question on everyone's mind is how long will it take for that appeal to be processed? Is there an estimate, or is it just completely up to the adjudicating official?
Although I think that is perhaps the most contentious consideration when it comes to submitting appeal applications specifically. And obviously guides a particular applicant when deciding to proceed with submitting an appeal application. What we've seen and based on our experience, appeal applications are generally processed within a time of between 8 to 12 months.
Okay.
We have to give credit to the Department of Home Affairs that since the clearance of the visa backlog, we've seen a rise in the effective processing times of particular type of applications. And it has to be noted that some appeal applications are adjudicated much quicker, but generally, as we've seen, it takes about between 8 to 12 months.
I mean, I don't think that's good news for anyone who is out there. I mean, 8 to 12 months, a year for your application to be processed sounds like a very long time, especially considering the fact that for a lot of applicants out there, there is the possibility that the current visa has expired. They were waiting for the renewal to come out, and now that's no longer a possibility because it's been rejected. Or the visa is about to expire, and now they're stressing about the whole thing of will they have legal status? Will they be allowed to remain in South Africa, for example? So tell me, is the 8 to 12 months set in stone? Is there a way to perhaps get your appeal pushed to the front of the line? Is there a way to submit your appeal where it's a preferred appeal, if I can put it that way, so that it gets adjudicated a bit faster than everyone else?
And definitely, Otto. How we usually go about in expeditious adjudication of appeal applications is by submitting what we refer to as a litigation ready appeal.
Okay.
So the essence of the litigation ready appeal is that we specifically request within the application that the application be adjudicated within a specified period of time, and that will all depend on the applicant's personal circumstances.
Okay. I think that provides a little bit of relief to anyone out there who is in one of those tight situations and they're not sure if they're going to be stuck in a backlog almost all over again, or if there is a possibility for them to get to the front of the line this time.
Of course.
But with regards to that, there is also another question which comes to mind, is that in certain instances, an appeal is not always the best option or the only option. There is instances where we've heard an applicant should rather reapply or submit a brand new application again because it's the preferred option in this instance. How exactly do you distinguish between the two? When should you appeal? When should you consider reapplying?
Well, Otto, as all attorneys usually say, it depends. It's largely dependent on the applicant's personal circumstances. I think the major consideration is normally the place of submission. So if an applicant is still situated in South Africa and, for example, applied for a renewal of their current visa and that application was rejected, it might be the preferred consideration to submit an appeal application in order to remain situated in South Africa, awaiting the outcome of that particular application. For applicants abroad, for example, it might not be as straightforward of a consideration. It all depends on their personal circumstances. But generally, submitting a new application is the preferred route, obviously taking into account the processing time of the different types of applications. Because appeal applications are sent directly to the Department of Home Affairs' head office in Pretoria, regardless of the place of submission. So generally, it is preferred by many applicants to submit a new application because it tends to be processed quite much quicker.
Okay, no, I think that's very interesting. And one of the key aspects anyone needs to consider depending on where in the world they are when they receive the rejection. I just want to pick your legal brain with regards to one of the things you said there is that if they're in South Africa, then an appeal is the preferred route. So does that mean that their legal status remains once they submit an appeal application? So they're not technically illegal whilst waiting for the application to be submitted, even though their current visa has expired. Is that correct?
Well, in most circumstances, yes, Otto. Well, it all depends on the specific time of submission. Currently, in South Africa, there is a specific concession that is in place that grants applicants a temporary blanket extension of their current visa status, which allows them to stay on in South Africa until the 30th of September 2025. So if they do proceed to submit an appeal application, they can effectively remain in South Africa at least until 30 September 2025. In previous occasions, when applicant had to await the outcome of their appeal applications, regardless of the specific processing time, they were allowed to remain in South Africa, but that effectively diminished their travel capacity as they were basically stuck in South Africa until the outcome was received.
Yeah, I think the key point on that extension is with regards to travel.
Yes.
I mean, I know staying in South Africa whilst you have been on appeal is completely fine, but travel is, again, one of the key factors for most people out there. So it's good to know that there is a concession in place, but it's expiring soon. So we'll have to see what happens and who is covered if it is renewed. So on that regard, I think we've given a good enough breakdown of what exactly the way forward would be and what are the options available to anyone out there who unfortunately received one of these poor rejections. So do you have any closing remarks, any key tips for anyone out there which we can leave them with?
Yes, of course, Oro. Again, I circle back to what I mentioned previously. It's very much important that should you prefer to submit an appeal application, that particular application must be submitted within 10 business days of receipt of the rejection notice. Otherwise, the time frame for submitting an appeal application will lapse. The applicant will unfortunately not be able to submit an appeal application. And if they are situated in South Africa, that might entail some severe consequences if they do not have current status within South Africa.
Yeah.
In many other circumstances, what we usually propose is that an applicant perhaps seek expert advice and assistance when compiling appeal applications, as in many circumstances, the reason provided for the rejection is quite complex, and obviously an applicant might require some assistance in addressing each and every specific reason as stipulated within the rejection notice, and in a very brief and concise manner set out the grounds for appeal to ensure that that application has the highest likelihood of success.
No, definitely. So basically, visit our website, Xpatweb. Yeah, but I think on that note, Ben, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I think we've addressed what we needed to today, and hopefully it provides a lot of insight to those out there who are listening, just to be able to know exactly what the way forward would be for them. So
Thank you, Otto.
on that note, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. But from the team at Xpatweb, that's it for today.